and welcome to another edition of Pop and Scott Talk Baseball. We took a week off. I went on vacation. Dad just enjoyed a couple of weeks of summer with his wife in the pool while they could. And how was your couple of weeks, Dad?
It was fine. We had some real hot weather, and then we had chilly weather. So, I mean, it's been a crazy summer. I mean, we really haven't had June here in this part of Virginia was cool. And then we had those 3 days where it was up around 98. The temperature was 105 or something like that. Right. That was week before last. And then last weekend it cooled off again, and we've been getting plenty of rain. So it's not bad. I mean, right now it's like about 88 degrees out there, but the humidity's so high. That's the bad thing.
Humidity here this summer has been just horrible. I mean, I don't remember it last summer. This is only my second summer here in Winston-Salem, but man, this year, a guy at work said it's like a wet blanket constantly on you. And the guys that are from here were saying it was a humid summer. So, but yeah, I haven't. To be honest, on vacation, I was just getting alerts. Haven't watched much baseball, but I've been keeping up with it with the crazy trades. Nothing really over the top. Did you see anything in the trades that caught your eye?
There were two trades that I think are going to help teams immensely. One, and it's already paid off, was the pitcher that the Tigers, Lorenzen, that went to the Phillies. He already pitched 8 innings for the Phillies. And Flaherty going from the Cardinals to the Braves. Those to me.
No, to the Orioles, right?
I mean, the Orioles, yeah. Those to me, because the Orioles, if they had a weakness, is in their starting pitching. Their bullpen's fine. Their starting pitching is weak. And now I'm not going to say weak, but it's not. They had 4 guys and another guy, and that was it. And if anybody gets hurt, you're done.
Right.
So to get a quality pitcher like Flair, and I'm sure he'll pitch better for the Orioles because he'll be playing for something.
There are 3 games in first right now. So.
He said he could tell the difference when he went in the clubhouse. Right. And everybody ran up and hugged him and everything.
Right. Yeah.
I watched the last 2 games they played against the Mets, and
see, I can't watch those games. I'm blacked out. So
yeah, the Mets pitching is not terrible. Their bullpen's not that great, but their starting pitching is not terrible. But they can't hit. They can't put hits together to score runs. They got to hit home runs to score. And the Orioles, they're smacking the ball all over the ballpark. I mean,
Well, the Mets, I've been saying it since last year. If you depend on the long ball, it's not the way to go. I know this new theory, home runs over base hits, bullcrap, but you got to have guys on base for those home runs to matter. I'd rather have guys on base and score a couple of runs on a base hit than a solo home run. Just that's a fact. So, but to me, the telling sign in the trades was the pitching. Pitching is a must in this league right now. It's kind of like a quarterbacks are in football. You could tell everybody has hitting because I don't think a major league hitter went from team to team. I think it was all pitching for prospects.
You know, small. If it was position players, they weren't the upper echelon.
Right, and I mean, the Mets made out. If you look at their prospect pool, I mean, I would like to see where their ranking is right now with those trades. Everybody's talking about how much money they were sending over, but to get the young, they got instantly young. And the prospects, I looked at them, and I think 4 of the prospects that they got went into their top 10, and they already had a strong top 10, which they can again now flip if they need to get a top tier pitcher if they, in the off season.
Well, I mean, you can hit or miss on those guys. I mean, I saw where I was watching MLB and they were talking about the 4 players that the Nationals got for Soto when he went to San Diego. Their number one pitcher is this left-hander from San Diego. They got the shortstop, and since they moved him to the leadoff position, he's hit like 340 or something.
Yeah,
and then they've got two kids on the farm. One of them is an outstanding outfielder, and the other one is a pitcher that throws 102. The only problem with him is he's so young and that he doesn't know where the ball's going.
Right.
He's in single A.
I was wondering, I was surprised that Stroman didn't get moved. So that means the Cubs are feeling like they got a chance to
the Cubs are the hottest team the Cubs are the second hottest team in the last 3 weeks. The hottest team, believe it or not, is Kansas City. They won 7 games in a row, and then they lost to the Phillies yesterday because the Kansas City
traded their. I mean, they did trade their second baseman, which was one of their. I think he was their number one pick before Bobby Witt, and I just that team is so young, and they have some good young players.
Well, they're calling Bobby Witt Bobby Baseball.
Right, and people are down on him because, well, first off, he's playing on a bad team, so you're not going to – and he's playing in Kansas City. Those two things, unless you're George Brett, nobody's going to really be paying attention to you.
You have to win.
Yeah, and unless you're playing in a big market.
Because they have Mahomes.
Right.
If they didn't win, who cares?
Right, and I mean, you got to play on East Coast in baseball to really be noticed. Most likely Northeastern and maybe the Dodgers. And outside of that, you got to be on a winning team. Anything else that really caught your eye
last Saturday, not yesterday, but last Saturday, Ruth and I were watching the game. We were watching a ball game, and Taylor Ward of the Angels got drilled with a 100-mile-an-hour fastball in the face, and I'm pretty sure he did. He elected to have surgery because it broke the eye socket bone, broke his nose, damaged several small bones in his face. With the way medicine is now, he has a chance to come back from that, but you don't know psychologically.
Right. Several players and pitchers have not been the same after.
Right, and I worry a little bit about the pitcher because it slipped. The ball slipped, and I mean, he was crushed. He was out there. He was crushed.
And that's part of why a lot of the guys in baseball, why the sticky substance never became like a big cry in baseball, because of that. They wanted the pitchers to have control of it. You're throwing 100 miles an hour. They want the pitcher to know where it's going, and then the people up above, because of the spin rate, became such a big deal. Started going, okay, something's going on, and they're the ones that made it a big deal. The players, they want you to have control of the baseball. But I mean,
the guy from Toronto who hit him, Alek Manoah, he's a good pitcher, and he is. The ball just slipped out of his hand, and he turned his face. Ward turned his face, and it grazed that flap that comes down over the ear, and then just smoked his face, and blood flew everywhere. I mean, it was. It took my breath away, and your stepmom almost fainted. I mean, she just went, "Oh no!" I mean, and
I didn't see the highlight of that because of that. I just when you told me about it, I didn't even get a notification.
Unless you're morbid.
I mean, the notifications. I was at the show. The people that watches, I was at a huge card show, and the notifications for the talk with trades, and I was wearing a Mets hat, and so I got talked to quite a bit. But I didn't know anything about. I also saw Marsh, the center fielder, ran into the fence and hurt his knee. And with the Phillies really turning the corner here for the playoffs, that might be an issue. He's a hell of a center fielder. They got him for his fielding. His hitting, whenever he hits, is a plus. So that's something to watch there in Philly.
Right, they haven't said how bad he's hurt yet, but if you've seen a picture of his knee, that thing, I mean, it had a knot on it. It looked like a golf ball.
Well, he went down like he was shot. I
Yeah.
saw the highlight of it today, actually, because I was just trying. I've been jonesing for baseball. I'm trying to see what game. Not big for the ESPN game tonight. I kind of wish. I was kind of hoping.
The ESPN game? I don't even know.
Dodgers and
San Diego.
Yeah, is that it? Yeah. So.
Yeah, they played San Diego the last 2 games.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping it was Mets in Baltimore so I can watch it.
They're playing this afternoon.
Yeah, they're playing now. So as me and my father are talking Sunday afternoon, and this will be released on Monday. So just want to let everybody know. Wait a minute, that's not going on.
We've been doing this little chat on Monday mornings, but it interferes with the pool time, and school will be closed in a couple of weeks because school's starting early here, and all the lifeguards go to school, so the pool's going to close early. So,
right.
But anyway, the next few weeks we'll do it on Sunday maybe, and then we'll go back to Monday.
Yeah, I kind of like this anyway.
Yeah, this is fine with me.
For us.
The thing I'd like to bring up about the only, and this, it's. I remember when it happened. Tony Conigliaro played. He was 24 years old, and he played for the Boston Red Sox. And he in 1967, when he was 24, he got hit by Jack Hamilton of the Angels in the face, and he never was the same after that.
Yeah, and there's been some few, and a pitcher. I wish I can remember names. I know a pitcher got hit. He can never pitch again.
Well, Herb Score was a pitcher. He pitched for the Cleveland Indians. They probably had the best pitching staff ever assembled in 1954 when they lost to the Giants in the World Series. And he was one of the top pitchers around. And he hit Gil McDougall of the Yankees in the face. And McDougall recovered. He never was the same player, but he did recover from it. But Score, he could hardly throw strikes after that. He pitched about 2 more years and had to retire because he never got over it. He never got over hitting him. And that was back in the 50s.
Well, I just want to go through this real quick with you. Baltimore, man, they are these young boys. I just want to show you this now. And this is not a card show. We talk baseball, but I just saw this today, and I wanted to kind of share this with everybody because this is the cockiness that we got going on right now with the Orioles, right?
They showed that last night during the game.
Right. So they showed this during the game, and Topps made a card of it. I mean, these, this is how they're feeling right now. Who can blame them? Who can blame them? I just wanted to share that real quick. Thought it was awesome.
Last night they had 40,000. It was sold out because before the game they honored the 1983 World Series team, and they were all back. They were all back there for the game. So they were sold out, and then on top of it, they won the game. So I mean, that was wild. Baltimore, those fans in Baltimore going crazy.
Right. So Baltimore's 3 games up. As much as we were talking about the Rays 2 months ago, just could not be stopped. The juggernaut. Here are the Baltimore Orioles, the young men that know better. I just love it. The Toronto, they went from last to now they're third.
In Toronto, the reason they're not higher up is they're 9-23 against teams in their own division.
Right. And that's because they're winning division. They're pitching. They're lacking in pitching. They are. And I can't believe they didn't make a move for Stroman or one of these other pitchers.
Well, Stroman hadn't pitched well the last 3 or 4 starts. Nobody really won.
Yeah, but you got to go by his whole, those last 3 or 4 starts is not him. That's not, we know who he is. Minnesota, 3.5 games up. I think they had made, Cleveland, they were not sellers. They thought they still have a chance. They're only 3.5 back. Texas is holding on. Houston got within a game this past week.
Yeah, now they've lost 2 in a row to the Yankees.
Right. So that's kind of a telling. And I mean, Verlander
tell
lost.
Your New York Yankee fan buddies of yours to don't moan too much. The season's not over. The Yankees have one thing that can get them through this, and that's pitching. They have the number 1 bullpen in the entire league. I mean, in the American and National League, their bullpen is the number 1 bullpen. Their starters are not half bad. So as long as they can pitch, they don't have to score but so many runs. So they might be okay, but they might not be long for the postseason if they don't produce some more runs.
Right. So we got Atlanta just rolling along. Philly. And Atlanta got stronger. They added some more pieces to their bullpen during the trade. Just getting stronger. Let's see, Milwaukee and Cincinnati.
Cincinnati's falling back.
But they're 1.5 back. I mean, they're in the wild card. We'll talk about that here in a minute.
Well, the Cubs are making the run.
They're 1 game behind. So the Dodgers and San Francisco. San Francisco's hanging around, and everybody else is just,
Arizona has the worst record in July.
Yeah, and they kind of played the way they are. We'll look at the wild card here. So Tampa, Houston, Toronto, Seattle's 2.5 back. So that's almost 3 weeks. That's 3 weeks that it takes to catch up. You kind of look at a win a week is how you look at that, and that's 3 games is tough at this point of the year. Yankees are 3.5 back. I just think this time of year these teams are too good. Just unless one of them just has one of their colossal meltdowns like the Mets last year or something like that. Let's see. In the other division, San Francisco, Philly, Cincinnati. Cincinnati's a half game on Miami. And Chicago's 1 game, Arizona's a game and half back, but we know. And San Diego, with all their issues, are 3 games back.
San Diego had the best record in the National League for the month of July.
Right, and I guess that's why they didn't get rid of anybody, because they're playing baseball now. Soto's playing well, and then after that, it's just the bad teams.
Everybody else in there is out of the race.
Right. So I mean, this is going to be interesting. You got, Boston's 4 games that they're still within shouting range, and down here you got 1, 2, 3, 4 teams that are in shouting range, and 3 teams in the American League. And really, Boston's kind of on that edge, and the Yankees to me are kind of on edge too. But they got enough talent, like you say, Yankees with that bullpen, and you're getting into the late part of the year where your bullpen comes into more and more play because your pitchers are putting up more and more innings.
I mean, Kansas City won a World Series because they had a bullpen.
Right.
Once you got through the 6th inning, you weren't going to score in the 7th, 8th, or 9th, not against those 3 guys.
And I'll give you a stat that usually pops up somewhere in the playoffs. That year, the Royals had 2 things. They led the league in batting average, and they led the league in 2-out RBIs. That 2 stats. 2-out RBIs usually come out huge. You'll see that a lot, that stat a lot at the end of the year. The Mets led it the last time they went to the World Series, and to last time they were in the National League Championship game. But just I tell people those stats are pretty telling to watch.
Did you see the fight?
I was going to talk to you about that. So, first off, I don't know what Jose Ramirez was mad about. You overslid second base. What is Tim Anderson supposed to do on a
Tim
tag?
Anderson was just straddling him. Somebody said he made a hard tag in the middle of his back. And that's what he got mad.
When he put the tag on him, he hit the top of his helmet and jerked and whiplashed him. You can see that. And then he continued the tag. But Jose Ramirez was on second base.
Yeah.
it wasn't like he stopped right when he slid in the second. What is Tim? And then he gets up and starts yelling at Tim, and everybody knows Tim Anderson ain't gonna take no crap from nobody. And they actually duke it up. This wasn't
they threw fists.
Right, they duked it up, and Jose Ramirez throws a haymaker out of right field somewhere and just connects right on the chin and drops. Tim Anderson didn't know who Tim Anderson was there for about 5 minutes. But then if you keep watching it, the managers and coaches almost get it. They had to be separated.
Right.
I don't know what the beef was, and I'd like to know if there was underlying issues there, because that snapped off.
Tim Anderson wouldn't speak to the press after the game, and Ramirez only thing he said, he thanked his team for having his back. That's all he said. Nobody said what happened to cause that.
Well,
the umpires didn't say anything.
I can tell you, man, White Sox got some big dudes on their team. I don't know if I'd square up with Jose Abreu or Robert or Luis Robert or some of those guys.
Well, they better be able to fight because they can't play baseball.
Right, right. So, I mean, that's the truth. And, you know, that's because my buddy hit us up on our group text last night. Telling us, I didn't see it. This dude watches a lot of baseball, and then I looked at the replay and I was like, "Why is Jose?" And it snapped off so fast. Like, man, Jose Ramirez must have said something about his mama, because to snap it off that quickly and not have an underlying problem between those two teams, it was weird. My buddy also posted a picture today of Jose Ramirez wearing boxing gloves today. That's kind of funny. But, you know, that we're in the dog days right now. The Guardians they're trying to fight to stay in it. The White Sox are just playing out their days. Tim Anderson, some people are saying he's having a bad year because he hasn't hit a home run. Then Ozzie Smith had a whole bad career. I don't like that when somebody says that. Too much is put on base on the home run in this war crap. So nobody does the eyeball test anymore. I don't know. Maybe we just some old guys, Dad, sitting on the lawn telling people to get off of it. But anyway, huh?
I mean, it's just you have a tendency to remember how the players played in the past, and you know. Somebody asked me, well, how come the game was only 2 hours long, or 2.5 hours? A long game was 2.5 hours in the 1950s. I said, no batting gloves. Nobody stepped out of the box to adjust a batting glove. They didn't have any. They didn't have batting helmets.
The games in the 90s were 2.5 hours long at the most. That's a recent phenomena, and a lot of it has to do with building their brands. You talked about this in other sports. Now baseball players are doing it too, because you have to promote yourself to make the big bucks. Even if you want to be selling Subway sandwiches or cars at the local dealership, to sign that contract, you got to be, you know, bigger.
You got to come out with the batting gloves, the headband,
and all that. You got to have time on the TV. You got to do this, but you know, I digress a little bit. I mean, I used to not think. I still think there's too many commercials and they're too long. We could probably get this down to 2 hours and 10 minutes if we use little league, 5 pitches and start to end it type of mentality. But fifth one, throw it down, let's go. But we don't. You know, they ads. It's big money. Teams now some of them even have something on their shirt now, things like that.
The Orioles game last night started at a little bit after 7. The Orioles and the Mets, and the game was over by 9:30.
Right, and that's great. I mean, it shouldn't. You know, baseball was never made to be a short game. If you look at the early 1900 games, and the portraits people painted and things, there are literally people sitting on the far outfield or on the fouls, take with picnics, watching the game. That's how baseball was made, as like a weekend afternoon, just leisure time play. That's why it's America's pastime. It's not because it's the most famous sport or everybody loves it the most. It's because it passes the time, literally. So I mean that's. But yes, 3 hours.
Society has changed now, where everything's got to be,
microcosm.
It's got to be faster and faster. I mean, that's
but then you got 3 hours for baseball.
It's too
ridiculous. And I mean, football's gotten ridiculous. 3.5 hours. Where now, I remember when I was a kid, the first game came on at 3, and the second game came on. The first game came on at 1
o'clock, and the second game came on at 4.
Right.
Now the first game comes on at 1, and the second game comes on at 4:30, and you better hope and pray the first game is over.
Right. That's for the national games is 4:30. If you're a local game and it's not the national game, it comes on still at 4.
And the other game's not over yet.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, and
a lot of commercials.
Right.
Commercials in. My wife and I were in there yesterday commenting on watching a little bit of golf between the baseball games yesterday. And I mean, every 2 shots, they were going to another commercial.
Right. Yeah. And I just, getting back to our sport, baseball, it's just, I think this season, everybody has forgot about the pitch clock for the most part. Everybody's gotten used to it. The bigger bases, we make fun of some of the things. Even with the bigger bases, Jose Ramirez couldn't stop his slide. It's just, it changes. They change the slide rules. They change, home plate, and we forget about it. The game's still the game for the heart of the game is still there. Speaking of the heart of the game, we're going to talk about one of the oldest teams in baseball that many people think the wrong team left. Some people think the right team stayed. But we're going to talk about the Phillies this week. Some of my friends love it. They're going to enjoy this.
Well, they might.
Yeah, well, let's.
Because I got to tell the truth. I mean,
they know they have bad years. So this is a team that has decades of bad to have a few years of good. So I'll let you go ahead and go with it.
Well, everybody, I mean, you're out there watching, just put on your seatbelt. This is going to take a while. The Philadelphia Phillies are the longest standing same name team in professional sports. All other teams changed their name at some time.
Was the Phillies ever? Now here's my question. Now I hate to interrupt you. Were they ever the Quakers? Because that was a team
that was a minor league team.
Okay.
And then, but the Phillies were established in.
Because believe me, if you're wrong, we're going to be getting some messages on this one.
Okay, that's fine. But I mean, I'm just, I got I looked up Wikipedia and
right. I got you.
What I can't remember, I got to look up.
Right. I know.
And I don't remember 1883. I'm sorry. But they belonged to in 1883. They joined the National League. They unfortunately their all-time record is 9,135 losses and wins and 232 losses. So they've got a losing record that way. They lost 23 straight in 1961, and that record was tied later. And that, and for 92 years, from 1883 to 79, they didn't do a whole lot. We'll get on to a couple of years where they did, but they didn't do a whole lot. They were that record about not winning a World Championship was passed by the Cubs in 2006. In 1884, the Hall of Famer Harry Wright and Ed Delahanty and Billy Hamilton and Sam Thompson, they were a Hall of Fame outfield. Harry Wright was the manager, and the other three were the Hall of Fame outfield, and they all hit over 400 in 1884, and they finished in the top half of the league. In 1911, they had Grover Cleveland Alexander, and he won 28 games. In 1915, he was 31-10, and they finished second in the National League. Then the next 30 years, they were last 17 times and next to last 7 times. After World War II, in 1945, they had Kurt Simmons, Richie Ashburn, Robin Roberts, Granny Hamner, Andy Simonek, and Dick Sisler. And they finished in the top half of the league. They were pretty good. They were a good team. In 1950, they had the Whiz Kids. And the Whiz Kids, that team, they're the Whiz Kids because they were all so young. They were swept by the Yankees in 4 games in the 1950 World Series. They also had an outfielder named Jim Constanti, who was an excellent outfielder. And that was their highlight reel of the 1950s. In 1964, they had Gene Mauch was their manager, Jim Bunning, Johnny Callison, Dick Allen, and they finished second. And the reason I emphasize second, with 12 games to go in 1964, they had a 6-game lead. And they lost that to the Cubs. They lost that lead to the Cubs. Or St. Louis, I'm sorry, to the Cardinals in 64. What really upset me, but I remember watching this, you listen to it on the radio, watching on television, was on the weekend. The manager, Gene Mauch, instead of keeping his pitching staff on 4 days, because they didn't have 5-game staffs, they had 4, and they had 3 days rest. He panicked and started pitching people on 2 days rest, and they kept losing. And then finally, the Cardinals caught up with them and beat them out in 64, and then went on and won the World Series. But I got some buddies of mine that are old like me, and they're Philly fans, and they don't like to talk about 1964 at all. But anywho, in 1970, they moved from old Connie Mack Stadium to Veterans Stadium, and they had one of the best pitchers of all time, Steve Carlton. And then in 76, 77, and 78, they won the National League title all 3 years. They had Greg Luzinski, Richie Hebner, Mike Schmidt. Mike Schmidt was, if I remember correctly, and your buddies can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Mike Schmidt, if I remember correctly, was the first person to be offered a $100,000 contract and for a year, and everybody went nuts. $100,000 to play baseball. But anyway, in 1979, they picked up Pete Rose, and Schmidt was the MVP. Carlton won the Cy Young Award, and I think they beat KC in the World Series.
Didn't around that time the Phillies try to pick up like half the Big Red Machine? Like, try to build the big Red Machine in Philadelphia?
Yeah. They went after a bunch of them. Then in 83, they lost to the Baltimore Orioles, and that's kind of significant because yesterday in the game last night, Baltimore honored the 1983 team, and all the players that could come back came back from the 83 team, and they were honored before the game last night, and they had 40,000 people there, and Rick Dempsey led the Orioles cheer. You know what the mascot does on the dugout?
Yeah.
Rick Dempsey did.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't run the bases again in the pouring down rain.
Well, Rick Dempsey led that, and the fans went crazy. And then in the dugout, they had Gonzalez, the coach. They had him mic'd up for the game. Uh-huh. And he turned around to what's the first baseman's name? Oh,
Mountcastle.
Mountcastle. He turned around to Mount Cat because the kids were in the dugout going nuts watching these old guys. And he turned around to Mount Cancel and he said, 40 years, you're going to be the one out there leading that. We're going to win it this year, and you're going to be the one out there having to lead that in 40 years. Mount Castle says, won't be me.
Well, yeah.
But anyway, in '83 they won. They won the World Series, and in '93 they won. I think they won again in '93 over Tampa Bay, or they won a division. I think they won the division series over Tampa Bay, and Jason Worth. Phillies won over Tampa Bay in '93, and they had Jason Worth, Chase Utley, Ryan Howard, Jimmy Rollins. Then in 2009, they lost to the Yankees, but they had two pretty good pitchers named Cliff Lee and Pedro Martinez. And in 2010, they got Roy Halladay.
Right.
And then they didn't do a whole lot after that. Everybody got old at one time. Ryan Howard, everybody got old. And so they didn't do much. And then last year, they came from nowhere to get to the series, and they lost to the Houston Astros.
Ryan Howard, if everybody remembers, he got a game-winning hit or something, jumped up between home and first, running to first, and blew his Achilles out.
He did.
And he was not a small fella, and he never really got back right after that. He had a great career. I loved Ryan Howard.
Yeah. The shame of it is, in a lot of ways, some of the older players that we talk about in the National League didn't have the benefit of some of the older players in the American League when they went to the DH.
Right.
Because you had players in the American League couldn't run anymore, but they could DH.
Right.
And some of these players, like Howard and that couldn't run anymore, they could have been a great DH just for their power. But anyway, that was the Phillies have had in the last half of their existence, they've had a lot more successful seasons than they did in the first half. But I remember as a kid listening to some of their games on radio and watching the All-Star game when I got to see Granny Hamner, and I had a Granny Hamner ball card. And I saw Richie Ashburn, Robin Roberts. He was an outstanding pitcher. But they didn't have anything behind him. And there again, the National League was a little more competitive when I was a kid than the American League, because the American League had the Yankees.
Well, I'm looking at their Hall of Fame list, and I mean, someone played on different teams, of course.
Exactly.
But you see their, Steve Carlton, Jim Bunning, Richie Ashburn, Grover Cleveland Alexander, Jimmy Fox, Chuck Klein, which I learned, I got to admit, I have some Philly friends, and these guys know the history up, down, sideways. I learned more from them talking to them than I ever will reading books. Mike Schmidt, which I love. I do like.
Well, Mike Schmidt, in my opinion, and I've seen a lot of them. I've seen a lot more than most people have.
Right.
Mike Schmidt, if he's not the best third baseman I ever saw, he's in the top 2 or 3.
Right. And Scott Rowland just got in. He wasn't just, with the Phillies, but he played a lot there. But they such a rich history. We're not talking like a Yankees history with all the World Series. I'm not downing it, but just the longevity and the players that come through there, the fans, the stadiums. The stadiums have such history. Everybody knows about their stadiums, their managers. I looked at their list of managers, and I'm like, oh my goodness! Jim Fregosi, Terry Francona, Larry Boa, Gary Varsha, Charlie Manuel, Ryan Sandberg. That's just a who's who of managers.
And the other thing you have to give credit. You have to give credit to the Phillies fans, because they've always supported the team.
And that's part of it. Is I joke that they all the Philadelphia A's were also there, and they joke about the wrong team left.
Well, that's who Connie Mack was affiliated with.
Right, and we'll talk about that on a different day if we haven't already talked about it. I think we've already talked about the A's, but it's just how it is. But I'm sitting here looking at their retired numbers, which reminds me, they have one more player that should have been in the Hall of Fame on the last one. He should have is Dick Allen. You look at his stats, the player he was. He's passed now. The sad thing is, I'll probably get him in eventually, but he won't. I hate when they put him in after they passed away. It does hit the player no good.
I've always thought that Dick Allen is one of those players that's right on the borderline. Is he really an all-star or just a very good player? But I'm almost have put him in there. I mean, the guy was outstanding. I mean,
when you look at his stats compared to some of the last few the players that they've put in, even on the the vote in with the guys that are already in on the board or whatever, he should have been put in. He should have been put in over Harold Baines, but he wasn't on the same pick. But I just his numbers retired there. You got Schmidt, Carlton, Budding. The rest of the guys were Holiday, Roberts, of course, Robinson, Grover Alexander, and Chuck Klein. They're all Hall of Famers. Of course, Chuck Klein and Grover Cleveland, they didn't have numbers. So
no, they didn't have numbers yet.
Right. So, just a wealth of when you talk about baseball and the originals, they're one of them, and just a rich history of it. It's awesome. I love those teams that have been around, since the beginning. Just great history. I'm a baseball park fan. I love looking at the old parks. I love baseball fields. That's why I like to show the pictures of the stadiums when you're talking, and the uniforms. Their uniforms right now are just some of the most beautiful uniforms of all sports. When they wear that baby blue or whatever that blue uniform is, it's really good, and pinstripes. So I picked them this year to be in the World Series to repeat.
They got a shot.
And they got a shot. So
they get in the playoffs, they can do the same thing they did last year.
Right. And I mean, they got stronger. They didn't pick up an outfielder they needed in the trade, I think. Outfielder goes down for them, and that's just how the baseball gods work that way. You need an outfielder, didn't get one, and guess what? One of yours gets hurt. So, hopefully somebody steps up for them, up for the minors, and actually, I'm not a Phillies fan. I am not a Phillies fan, but I like to see good baseball and good end of the year runs, and it makes it fun to watch. So.
Well, Bryce Harper started out with the Nationals, so I still root for Bryce Harper. I mean,
right. Well, I read an interesting article on him today about him seeing a child crying in the stands that got separated from his brothers, and him helping him out. Like the dad and Bryce Harper came out. He's matured. I've said it before. 2 years ago, he put the Phillies on his back and carried them. Didn't make the playoffs, fell short, but they didn't have a chance still. I go, this guy is no longer a boy. He was a boy with the Nationals. He's a man now, and he's a man that has pride and knows what the sport is about.
Well, he hit the home run against San Diego to put him in the World Series.
Right, and that's just how and that's, he's the guy. I mean, if he could just stay healthy for a full season right now in his prime, I think he'd be the best hitter out there. I don't know. I can't say he won't have the best season because Shohei Ohtani might be having the best season of all time. I saw that article, and it's hard to kind of dispute. I saw numbers comparing him with Babe Ruth with the same amount of starts, pitching, and hitting. And he's ahead of Babe Ruth on both stats. Not by much, but he is. So, man, what a year. We're going to have a great finish to this season. I don't like the format of 6 playoffs, but it does make it fun to watch the end of the season because it makes the playoffs another season, and I don't really like that in other sports.
Well, one thing, the Angels aren't they're just treading water,
right.
But somebody asked me about. Somebody asked me. I was walking in the mall one day, and the two old guys they're national fans too. But they asked me, why didn't they trade Ohtani? And I said they had offers, but teams did not offer. They didn't want to offer frontline players because if you're trying to get if you give up frontline players to get a frontline player, how much better is Ohtani than the guys you give up?
Right.
And if you do that, you're going to have a hole somewhere else. I said, plus the fact they didn't want to give up a whole bunch of prospects because if he went to another team at the end of the year, now you're out him and all your prospects.
Well,
so he's very many decent offers. And the owner said, well, I'm not going to trade him anyway because I'm not going to be the one to trade him. So they tried to get a couple of players, and then they're going to make an offer for him at the end of the year. So we'll just have to wait and see. But I got a feeling he might go to the Dodgers.
What a team would have had to give up is 2 MLB players
and about 4 prospects,
and probably 4 prospects, and probably 2 of your top 10 and 2 others. So that's what people were looking at,
and nobody can afford to do that.
No, I would say not. I really would. I thought so.
You know who could have? You know who could have given 2 of their starting players and their top 4 prospects, and it wouldn't have hurt the team? Oakland. A team that doesn't have a chance could give up everything they had to get Ohtani to put people in the seats.
So in 2021, he signed a 2-year contract for $8.5 million. It's $30 million deal is the biggest contract for a player for arbitration, over 27 million Mookie Betts in 2020. So, yeah, it's going to be fun for the Shohei. You think he's going to be a Dodger?
Well, I hope he stays an Angel, but I mean,
I don't think it's going to happen.
No, I don't either. And
I think
but the way
Trout
people are talking, he doesn't want to leave the West Coast either.
I think with airplane travel, I just don't. Why not play in New York? I'm not saying with the Mets either. I'm saying, I mean, I think the Cubs will make a serious run at him. The Giants, Baltimore might even. I don't know, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he ain't a Dodger because it looks like they kind of shipped off a lot of contracts for some reason this year, and they still got plenty of good ball. But I'm sure Trout is telling Ohtani, "Don't stick around here, man. I made that mistake, and I'm paying for it." So that team has no direction whatsoever. But anyway, you got anything closing, Dad, before we head out?
No, I'm just. It seems like every week we do this show, somebody else is hot and somebody else cooled off. But that's the nature of the sport.
Yeah, ebb and flow, man. That's why it's 162 games. So the cream definitely rises to the top. We saw during the COVID years, short season was fun and all, but baseball's just not made. It's a numbers game, and to get the numbers right, you got to have enough games. I think they should shorten the season a little bit with having 6 teams in the playoffs. 154 games, maybe 156. I think is what they played in up to the 60s, right? I just think maybe
they played 154 and then they went to 162.
Yeah, I think that number should be looked at, just for the sake of the season, longevity of the season, and pitchers' arms. We're not getting better pitching. That's why I don't want to expand the league to 2 more teams because pitching is so watered down. The trade and the draft proved both of that. The draft was nothing but shortstops and pitchers in the first round, and the trade was mostly pitcher. The named players were pitchers. So that's my closing statement: is no more teams. I wish we would disband 2 teams and not have 2 more. It makes the league stronger. So until next time, like, share, tell a friend, hashtag watch the games, and we'll see ya.